Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am talking about bringing video gamers into tabletop role-playing games. So one of the reasons why I'm talking about this today is I was very blessed to run a one-shot game on Thursday this week. So it is Saturday today. About 2 days ago, I ran a one-shot at Tabletop Role-Playing Game Adventure. This is a very, very unusual game. So I'll just explain what the game was. We ran a tabletop role-playing game one-shot. It ran with the Dragonlance 5th edition Saga system rules. If you're not aware of it, it is a beautiful, beautiful game. It is diceless. It uses a card system. It came out in 1996, and it was created by TSR. And it's one of the games in my collection. It's a very special game to me. I don't run it that often. I almost always run it as a one-shot. It's almost never run as a campaign, right, for various reasons. But it's really, really nice game. I like it a lot. It's a lot of fun. We set the story in the Dragonlance world, and we physically gathered around a table at a local gaming shop close to where I live. And we were very fortunate because I have some local gaming shops where on almost any night you can walk right in. They have extra tables. You can sit right down and play any tabletop role-playing game you want, which is really wonderful. Now, you need to bring your role-playing game in, but they give you space, and it's really great. We're really blessed to have a number of really great, friendly local gaming shops in our area. So the reason why I'm talking today is this is a really unusual game, primarily because of the genesis of the game. So my wife is, I have a beautiful wife who is just a blessing to me and my family in every way. I'm really fortunate to have her. I've been married to her for 25 years, and she's just the very best, and I'm very fortunate to have my wife. And so my wife, she asked me to run this tabletop role-playing game. Now, this is interesting. I am a full-on nerd, geek, whichever label you want to use, right? Both apply to me, and my wife is not. so she is not into tabletop role-playing games in any way, and she tolerates nerd and geek culture fandom because she loves me. They really do nothing for her. Her biggest fandom by far is Jane Austen, which does not count as a fandom because, if you're a fan of Jane Austen and you read books, you're just considered a reader. Like, that's not considered a fandom, right? You don't get a side eye for that anymore. Although, we're really blessed to be coming up to the point where even nerd and geek probably have more positive shine on them than negative, and that's changed within the last 20 years quite a bit. This is the first time I can ever remember this happening. My wife asked me to run this game, and the reason she asked me to run this tabletop role-playing game, which she did not play in, was because her friend asked her, who is the wife of another family we know, a wife and mother within another family we know, and she asked Leanne, said, "Hey, I know that your husband is really into role-playing games. Well, my brother-in-law is coming into town for 2 weeks on vacation, and he is a huge fan of role-playing games. So that's a no-brainer. Scott should run a game for him, right?" And Leanne said, "Well, friend, I will ask Scott if he wants to do that." So my wife asked me, and I said, "Yeah, no problem at all. I'll run a one-shot, right?" So they give me the information of the brother-in-law. His name is Ricardo. And so I shoot a quick text to Ricardo, and I say, "Hi, I'm Scott Garibay, and your sister-in-law told me that you like to play role-playing games. Here's what I can run. I can run a tabletop role-playing game of Dungeons and Dragons, or I can run this thing called Fate Accelerated, which is a universal role-playing game system, and we can play in Avatar: Last Airbender. We can play a Transformers game. We can play a Star Wars game, whatever you like, right? So you just let me know what you like, and we'll get this going, right?" Well, Ricardo comes back to me, and he actually calls me back, right? So I only texted him when I contacted him, and I don't know this guy from Boo, right? And but I love my wife. She doesn't ask too much from me. So when she does, I try to make sure I do it. And it's crazy. It's the first time in my life a tabletop role-playing game was a honeydew. So Ricardo calls me. He goes, "Hey, I'm sorry, dude. It's been a mistake." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Yeah. The wives, my sister-in-law and your wife, they don't know the difference between a video game role-playing game and a tabletop role-playing game." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." So both of us are kind of disappointed. Like I'm like, "Oh, I thought you were a real role-playing game fan," and he's kind of like, "Oh, I thought you were a real role-playing game fan," right? And so, honestly, I have to say, I don't have a huge amount of respect for video game role-playing game fans. I don't have any ill will toward them, but like, if I know you play tabletop role-playing games, I know you're something special, right? You have read 300 to 900 pages of content to play a game. That puts you in a different bracket of person, right? If you play video game role-playing games, I can stand in any room, spin around and throw a rock, and I'm going to hit a video gamer, right? They're just like, it's not, I don't want to be dismissive of it, but it's, being a video game player today, it's not a niche market. It is absolutely mainstream. And so, the two of us are kind of like, when we're sitting there on the phone, and he's like, "Well, you know what? I could try it, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, okay, I can run it, And so the two of us, I feel like his sister-in-law and my wife were really excited about this game. They thought he was going to have fun. They thought I was going to have fun. To them, they didn't care about the difference between a tabletop role-playing game and a video role-playing game. I care about it deeply. This guy cared about it deeply. But both of us knew, you know what? Let's just get together and play this game because it's going to make everybody involved happier, right? So I think both of us decided to move forward because, the wives were... It would help make the sister-in-law and the wife a lot happier, right? So we tried it, right? And so I said, "Great," and I said, "What would you like to play?" He goes, "Oh, whatever." I said, "Well, I'll keep it really generic. I'll try to give you a good taste of what role-playing games are, right?" And so now, to tell the truth, the only thing I kept generic. So at that point, I began preparing for the game. I had about 3 days to prepare for the game, and then also one of the other things was the sister-in-law also sent somebody else to the table. And her name was Alyssa. She's another player, right? I was glad to have her at the table. So now and then I needed to bring 2 to 5. I needed to bring 2 more players, really. Two would have been ideal, and 3 would have been good. And so I needed to bring more players to the table to make it feel like a real role-playing game, right? For this guy, because at this point my job was, I want to show this video gamer. I had a whole bunch of goals. One, I wanted to fulfill the ask from my wife, right? And I wanted to really do a good job of showing that role-playing games can be exciting and fun, right? So I wanted to try to convert this guy, to bring him over to our side, right? So, and the reason why, and so I want to talk about that just a little bit, right? Why do I want to convert him? Why do I want to bring him over to make him into a tabletop role-playing game? The reason why, in my opinion, when you bring in a new tabletop role-playing game, that is a net benefit for the world, okay? It means that it means that 1 to maybe 1,000 print books are going to get sold. Tabletop role-playing games are still a print market, right? And I do not know a single tabletop role player that owns any less than 10 tabletop role-playing game books. And most guys I know who play tabletop role-playing games own 50 to 100 plus books, right? So I think that's great because it keeps literacy high, right? And and that's good. So and I think that's a net good for the world. It raises the literacy of the world, and it helps print books remain relevant. That's good for business. That's good for literacy. That is good. The other issue is you get people who are spending time with people, right? Overall, tabletop role-playing games are known for the word tabletop. they bring people physically in vicinity of each other. That is a huge net benefit for humanity, not just for tabletop role players, but for humanity as a whole. To say, I'm not going to spend another I'm going to take a break for at least 4 hours a month and be in proximity to other people and treat them like human beings, rather than I'm going to play another MMO, where maybe we talk together, but the reality is I don't physically see that person, and it's easier to objectify them. It's easier to not think of them as human. It's literally humanity separated, right? So I feel, I really feel like the biggest goal right now in tabletop role-playing games is bringing people from video games to tabletop role-playing games, right? So I was absolutely incented to bring this guy over, to show him that tabletop role-playing games are engaging and fun, right? So that was a goal. Fulfill my wife's ask, run a successful game for Ricardo, this guy who was coming in, right? So those were my goals, right? So we go in, and the first thing that happens is I have two gaming groups. I have Nerdarchy, which I'm so blessed to be connected with them. Their stuff, they just went over 30,000 subscribers, and they still have me as a game master, right? And I get to game master for them once a month. It is an incredible privilege. I take it very, very seriously, and I know what a privilege it is, right? These guys they're internet celebrities now, right? I used to say, nano celebrity. I think they're micro celebrities at this point, and I think they're very much approaching celebrity, period. No prefix, right? They have 30,000 fans, right? This is huge, right? And so that's a big deal. Like there's stuff showing up at their doorstep from companies, preview products and Kickstarters. The world is coming to these guys to sell product. And so that whole part of my tabletop role-playing game world, it's like being in Elvis's entourage, right? It barely feels like role-playing because it's just so special, right? So, and I know that not a lot of people get a role-playing game group like that. So I am really so blessed to be connected with them, and I just want to do everything I can to make a great game for them. Once a month, I get to play in one of their games once a month. It's incredible. I'm just so happy about it, right? And so that's a really big deal to me, right? And I have this second group of role-playing game players who they show up for my non-Nerdarchy games, right? And it's this group of guys. I've got about 5 or 6 guys, and I don't even schedule the games for them. I literally say 2 days ahead, I got an open slot, I'm going to run this game. If you want to come, show up, great. If you don't, we're going to play with whoever shows up, and I wish I could be more respectful to them and time and do better job of timing these games. But the reality is those are all pickup games because I'm in 2 campaigns a month, right? And so, my schedule, I got 4 kids and a wife I love. My schedule does not really permit a whole lot more games in there, right? So I need to throw games together and run them when there's a window to run them, right? And that's when, all my kids are at youth group, or, my wife's out of town, or, any of those things. I try to find slots where my family does not need me, right? So I shot out an email to my group 2 days advance. And 3 of them come back and say, I'll be there. The other 2 say, hey, sorry, I'm working, So they would have been there if they hadn't been working. But, and I got 60%, response from my groups. And I'm telling them this is a one-shot, so, and this is a game that was created in 1996. This game is 21 years old. A diceless 21-year-old role-playing game that I'm going to run. And 60% of my crew show up, and the 40% who don't show up are only because they have work that night, right? So I just, I felt really blessed to have my crew just show up, kind of on 2 days' notice. And it also, that's another thing to me, is like, that's the other thing is friendship. Friendship, with tabletop role-playing games, I feel that the friendship that grows there is far more real than the friendships that grow from video games. And the reality is, and the reason why is, I can physically shake their hand. We can go out for a meal together. We can trade books. It's human. It's human interaction, right? Whereas if you have a guild and, you know, and one guy, if you have a guild online and one guy's across the world and, you know, one guy's over here, it is a shadow of a relationship. It is a shadow of human interaction. But the net benefit for tabletop role-playing games is much higher to all of humanity than adding a new video gamer to the fold. In fact, I would argue that no one needs to recruit video gamers. The market has created a massive influx of video gamers. And so there are far more new video gamers being created than old ones who are dying off or who are leaving the hobby, right? And no one is worried about video games going away. Whereas tabletop role-playing games, people definitely are. So I'll cut to the chase. The game was 100% successful. Ricardo jumped in. He immediately began role-playing because the video game role-playing had given him an idea, a concept of how to do it, right? And what I did was I tried to simplify the rule set as much as possible. And we told one complete story of a wizard who dies in the beginning, and that wizard, an old dragonborn, has a mount that goes crazy and goes to kill a bunch of people at a close village. And they capture, and he says, "Hey, protect the village, protect my mount." And they do it. You know, the players do it, and that was our story. And it was one complete story. It took 3 hours to run. We had an absolute blast. Ricardo had a great time. And then we stood for a full 60 minutes after the game just talking about Star Trek and Star Wars and Make-A-Wish and Foundation and BitTorrent and nobody BitTorrents anymore. That's not a thing anymore. And then, you know, this is kind of like AOL or something. You know, what's the point of BitTorrenting a movie when you can just queue it up for virtually free on Netflix? We had this amazing conversation, and everybody just had a great time. And when the sister-in-law came to pick this guy up, right? And you know, because he's in town and he doesn't have a car, right? It was pretty awesome. Like, because, you know, it was like she came in and like my wife and this sister-in-law, you know, nerd fandom is not part of their world. And just to see people who didn't know each other and everyone is talking and instantly friends and has a million things to talk about, it almost made me cry. Like, it was just like, it was so easy and seamless, and it was such a big 100% success. So, you know, if you're going to bring video gamers over, make sure into tabletop role-playing games, make sure you can tell one succinct story quickly in one evening. And I think that's the key. And then show them how much fun it is. Thank you.